South Africa is mourning. Presley Chweneyagae, the star of Tsotsi and the River, has died at just 40. Actor Presley Chweneyagae has died at the age of 40. Passing of Presley Chweneyagae, he who passed away at the age of 40.
It starts without noise or spectacle. No flashing lights, no arrests, no urgent headlines, just a legal instruction that quietly places a freeze on one house in an otherwise Pretoria suburb. From the outside, it looks ordinary. Clean walls. A gate that swings open and shut like countless others across the city. Yet behind that gate lies a narrative that reaches deep into South Africa's cultural core, a story where money meant to uplift struggling young artists intersects with celebrity, power, and the enduring legacy of a man millions welcomed into their homes through television screens. The name linked to this case still commands attention. Presley a Cobra Chweneyagae, a national figure, a cultural symbol, now, even after his death, drawn into a corruption investigation that refuses to disappear quietly. On December 18, 2025, the Special Tribunal approved a preservation order requested by the Special Investigating Unit, SIU, effectively freezing a residential property located in Hestia Park, Pretoria. Technically, it is a routine legal safeguard. In practice, it reopens difficult and unresolved questions about the flow of National Lotteries Commission (NLC) funds, about who truly benefited, and about how far alleged corruption may have extended into sectors once considered beyond suspicion, the arts, youth empowerment, and cultural development. According to the SIU, the property was acquired using money that should never have been used for that purpose. Investigators claim the funds were unlawfully diverted from a National Lotteries Commission grant, not a minor amount, not leftover change, but part of a 15 million rupees allocation intended specifically for youth arts development initiatives. This funding was meant to support creative programs, train young artists, and provide pathways out of poverty through artistic opportunity. Instead, the SIU alleges that approximately 889,000 rupees of those funds were redirected toward the purchase of a private residence. This is the point where the story grows heavier and more emotionally complex. Presley a Cobra Chweneyagae was not just another public figure. He is embedded in South Africa's post-apartheid cultural memory. His Oscar-winning performance in Tsotsi brought international acclaim to South African cinema. His role as Cobra Mach 1 on the River made him instantly recognizable, sharp, charming, morally layered. To countless young South Africans, he represented possibility, living proof that talent could overcome circumstance and reach the world stage. That celebrated image now sits uneasily beside legal affidavits, forensic financial tracking, and claims of public money being misused. The preservation order applies to several parties. Central among them is Charlene Christine Chweneyagae, cited both in her personal capacity and in her role as executrix of her late husband's estate. Also listed are Alfred Mazwek Segudla, the Southern African Youth Movement NPC, and Domestic Baboon, Proprietary, Ltd., a company wholly owned by Chweneyagae. The SIU argues that the way these transactions were structured raises serious concerns. Records show that the National Lotteries Commission approved a 15 million rupees grant to the Southern African Youth Movement NPC, represented by Segudla. The stated purpose was straightforward: youth arts development through structured programs, workshops, and opportunities for emerging creatives. However, investigators alleged that a portion of this funding was routed through Domestic Baboon, Proprietary, Ltd. before being used to buy a private home. If these claims are upheld in court, they would illustrate a familiar pattern, not overt theft, but the subtle repurposing of public money through layered transactions, corporate entities, and documentation that appears legitimate until closely examined. It is important to note that a preservation order does not amount to a declaration of guilt. It is a preventative step designed to ensure that the property cannot be sold, transferred, rented out, or otherwise disposed of while legal proceedings are prepared. The SIU has 60 court days to formally institute civil action, either in the High Court or before the Special Tribunal. Still, the symbolic impact is significant. The order holds not just a transaction, but a narrative many would prefer to leave untouched. It forces the nation to confront the reality that alleged national lottery corruption did not stop with anonymous officials or obscure NGOs. it reached into the realm of art, celebrity, and aspiration. This matter forms part of a much wider investigation. The SIU probe into alleged corruption and maladministration at the National Lotteries Commission was authorized by President Cyril Ramaphosa under Proclamation R32 of 2020. That decision launched one of the most extensive examinations of the lottery system in South Africa's history. For years, the NLC was promoted as a source of hope, a way for ordinary citizens to support social good simply by buying a ticket. Community halls, sports facilities, cultural projects, youth empowerment initiatives, that was the promise. What investigators say they uncovered instead is a deeply troubling pattern: politically connected beneficiaries, shell companies, compromised nonprofits, and a system repeatedly manipulated to enrich a few while depriving many. Viewed within that broader landscape, the Chweneyagae-linked property is not an exception, it is one fragment of a much larger picture. The emotional intensity of this case is heightened by timing. Presley Chweneyagae is no longer alive to offer explanations, challenge allegations, or defend himself. Supporters argue that his artistic legacy should not be overshadowed by ongoing legal processes. Others respond that public funds do not become private assets simply because the recipient was admired or talented. The law itself makes no allowances for fame. The SIU's role is deliberately uncompromising. Its mandate is to recover losses suffered by the state, to trace money flows, freeze assets, and reverse transactions linked to unlawful conduct. Under the Special Investigating Units and Special Tribunals Act, 1996, criminal convictions are not required for civil recovery. The standard is a balance of probabilities. Should evidence of criminal activity emerge, it is then forwarded to the National Prosecuting Authority, NPA. At that point, the consequences escalate sharply. Prosecutorial involvement would shift the focus from asset recovery to accountability, from freezing property to potential criminal liability for those still living and implicated. For the arts sector, the implications are particularly painful. Youth arts funding has long been scarce, often dismissed as non-essential. When money designated for young creatives is allegedly diverted, the harm is tangible: cancelled programs, lost opportunities, and futures that never materialize. Each misused rupee represents a stage not built, equipment never purchased, a story never told. This is why the SIU emphasizes that the preservation order matters beyond the property itself. It affirms a principle: public money must serve public interests, regardless of who benefits from it, even when that person is a national icon. The order also places Charlene Christine Chweneyagae in an exceptionally difficult position. As executrix of the estate, she is legally obligated to respond to allegations that reach into personal and emotional territory. Estates are typically meant to bring closure. In this case, the law has reopened unfinished business. Alfred Mzansi and the Southern African Youth Movement NPC face equally intense scrutiny. Non-profit entities rely on public trust. When that trust is violated, the damage extends well beyond a single case, undermining confidence in civil society as a whole. The SIU has stressed that this investigation is not about optics or symbolism. Its objective is restitution, recovering funds, returning money to the state, and ensuring that unlawful benefits are not retained. Even so, symbolism cannot be ignored. South Africa has a long history of elevating public figures, only to later grapple with their contradictions. What distinguishes this case is that it is not driven by rumor or online outrage. It is a legal process grounded in documentation, bank records, and forensic analysis, and that distinction is critical. As the SIU prepares its civil case, unresolved questions will grow louder. Why was Domestic Baboon Proprietary Ltd used as an intermediary? What services, if any, justified the flow of funds? Who authorized the transactions? Who approved them at the National Lotteries Commission? And how many similar cases remain undiscovered? Answers will not come quickly. Civil litigation moves deliberately. Evidence will be challenged, defenses presented, and context debated. Ultimately, the courts will decide. But one conclusion is already emerging: the period when national lottery funds could quietly be redirected into private hands is coming to an end, one preservation order at a time. For admirers of Presley, Cobra, Chweneyagae, the emotional conflict is undeniable. It is possible to celebrate his artistic achievements while still insisting on accountability for public money. Those truths can exist side by side, however uncomfortable that may be. The house in Hestia Park now remains frozen, not only as a legal asset, but as a symbol. It marks a pause, a moment of national reflection on how easily good intentions can be corrupted, and how oversight, even when delayed, still matters. The SIU has drawn its line. What follows will test whether South Africa's institutions can carry this process through, without fear, without favor, and without being blinded by fame.